Well, thanks for joining us today. We're going to be talking today about 3 ways for companies, nonprofits, and individuals to thrive in inflationary times. My name is John Stacy, and I have been around a while. I've had the opportunity to live through multiple ups and downs within our economy. I remember back in the 70s and 80s, late 70s and early 80s, to really saw the interest rates. Bought a house with a 12% interest rate. Saw inflation, but I don't know that I've seen anything like the economic times that we're having today. But guess what? There are some things that you can do. You can not only survive but thrive during this time. But you've got to understand or look for new and different ways to really help your company, help you as an individual and your employees, as well as nonprofits. Today, we're going to be talking about a couple of things. We're going to be talking about, one, what are the economic conditions that we see out there, both on a macro and a micro level. And then we're going to talk about strategies and things that you can do to really go ahead and, again, thrive in this current economy. So the first thing we're really going to be talking about is the current economic landscape. Our real wages have declined. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. You look at the difficulty from a home buyer perspective. Homes, the prices have increased substantially due to a lot of different reasons, including largely inflation. And at the same time, you've got that going on. You've got interest rates that have gone from 2.8% to 6.9%. over the last 3.5 years. Those two things from a housing perspective are really damaging to the economy, and it's a challenge for a lot of home buyers or potential home buyers to buy homes. If you look at the inflation rate, and we hear the government talking about the inflation rate coming down, all that's really saying is the rate of increase is decreasing. It's not saying that things are getting better. If you look at the last 3.5 years, the actual cumulative interest rate is up over 20%. And I'll talk about gas in a minute, but you look at the cost of housing, that's having a significant impact. You look at the cost of food, and I've seen some things on food, and food has gone up. Those things that we buy a lot of have gone up, really an average increase of about 46%. And I'll give you some examples. Orange juice, 43%, eggs, 100%, ground beef, 40%, rice, 50%, potatoes, 50%, milk, 50%. So there's a lot of things that you're seeing when it comes to food that is just crippling to you, whether you are a low-income earner or a middle class. These things are impacting a lot of things that we do on a regular basis. So we've talked about housing, we've talked about food, we've talked about gas. Gas is up 38%. Again, these things are a challenge. So what's happening? What we're seeing is that a lot of people are still trying to live at the same level that they were living at before the inflation. And how do you pay for it if everything costs more? Well, you put it on your credit card. And so what we're seeing is record credit card debt in the U.S. And in addition to that, we're also seeing a decrease in the savings rate from 12.8 to 3.8%. Again, it's becoming more and more difficult to live as we're going, as we do or have on a daily basis. Now, but you hear, well, the stock market does appear to be doing somewhat well. But when you start looking at where we are from an inflation perspective, the stock market really is not even gaining what inflation has caused it to do. So it's really, the dollar is devalued, it becomes a real challenge. One of the things I talked about is, unfortunately, inflation is not impacted by gravity. What goes up won't come down. Now, you see some things on an individual basis that comes down, but the fact of the matter is, what goes up will not come down. So that's on the macro level, that impacts everybody. When I start looking at kind of the micro level for companies, and I work with and talk to a lot of small business owners. And what we're seeing is soft sales, the transactions are decreasing, number one. And number two, the size of transactions is decreasing. So what people are spending is a little less. You throw in the increased wages, and again, wages aren't keeping pace, but owners are increasing wages, but that isn't covering the cost of everything, and we've talked about the cost of food and the impact of you on an individual basis. So what does that mean to a business owner? I did an analysis on a $1 million business, and in short, their margins were down between 5 and 7 points, and they had to increase sales to offset their cost of goods and their expenses. Insurance is up between 20 and 50%. To offset these expenses, they had to have an 18.9% increase just to stay where they were 3 years ago. Now, if you think about that, that's actually pretty scary for a lot of different companies. And something that you should know, I think I heard a higher number, but when I did this a month or so ago, the average employee needs to find about $10,800 per year just to stay even, just to stay ahead of that credit, pay for that credit card debt. I think I heard a number yesterday of about $13,000. Well, whether it's $11,000 or $13,000, how can you as an employee really manage to continue to live the way you are? So you've got to find some ways, and I think as business owners, we need to help them find a way, not only through some wage increases, but through some other things to do to generate a little bit more income. So let's talk a little bit about strategies. Okay, I'm going to focus more initially with recruitment and retention, start talking a little bit about what we can do both as an employer and an employee, because I think if we really focus on the employee, they're going to help us manage our business. They're going to help us continue to grow, which is what we need, but we need to make sure that we are taking care of them. So as you look at it, there are employee programs. There's zero upfront cost in a lot of cases. And that's really about helping the company save money, and it's about helping the employee save money. So for example, there's a cost savings program out there that helps employees and companies focus on monthly expenses. What can we do to negotiate lower expenses? We all have cable, wireless, satellite, pest control, home security, and TV. What are our options to be able to negotiate that? And I know we say, well, we're going to call them and negotiate. Well, here's a company that's going to negotiate it for you. It doesn't cost anything to negotiate. They do share the savings, though. There are some other companies out there, and I had a person come up to me a month or so ago and say, hey, do you want to stand in the full price line, or do you want to stand in the discount line? And I'm like, well, I'd prefer to pay a discount if I can. And there's a couple companies out there that are either no cost or low cost for discounts. One of them is Starfish Perks. I can talk a little bit about that. But you know, they have discounts like Panera is 5%, Lowe's is 3%, Olive Garden 6%. There are some of those things that you can do to really help generate some discounts. There's some other discount programs out there that show gas discounts, Savings Highway. There's multiple ones. Savings Highway is a pretty good one. Cost savings in multiple areas, food and restaurant discounts, employee discount shopping. So from an employee perspective, if you can provide these, even at a low cost or no cost perspective, it may be something that you want to do to really help them save money. And some of these programs are also can be utilized or should be utilized by companies to help them cut some of their costs. And then there's ERISA compliance, and this is not an employee benefit, but when it comes down to it, you as an employer, if you have health programs, have significant risk if you don't follow the programs. And if you do have 30, 50 or more employees, it's something you should take a look at. It's about mitigating risk and saving money on some of your healthcare programs. I can talk about that if you want to give me a call. There's also healthcare strategies related to preventative care. And when it comes down to it, preventative care helps us in a lot of different ways, because if we can keep our employees employed, working and happy, that ends up saving us money. There's some other programs out there, and each one of these programs that I'm talking about are specific to employees, in companies and nonprofits. But we really need to talk a little bit individually. Every company is different. Every company needs are different. Every company's costs are different. And so when it comes down to it, it's one of those things that we really could focus on, but it needs an individual discussion to talk about what your needs are specifically. And then there's some other things as we get into it, as we get away from talking about employees, we talked about your strategy related to cash management and protection. We really need to make sure that we're evaluating or assessing our cash reserves. We know what money we're going to need, and do we have access if we have late payers, if we have a situation where our payroll goes up for a short-term project. Is there some things that we need to do? There's conventional or non-traditional types of money out there, but you have access to capital or ready capital and like a line of credit or something along those lines. And then we'll talk about AI in a minute, but there is some ways to leverage automation, and I'm actually looking at about 25 different AI programs that'll help you negotiate costs and streamline operations, something that we need to take a look at. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about recurring revenue. And I'm not sure if you know what recurring revenue is. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today talking about it, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But when it comes down to it, strategies for you as a company. And when I talk to people, I ask them, what's your biggest problem? Is your biggest problem revenues or driving revenues or increasing revenues, or is your biggest problem that your costs are out of line due to inflation? And so there's different strategies that we can use for each of those as we talk about our different opportunities. When it comes to revenue, differentiate offerings to attract customers. So my question to you is your product, or how is your product different and how is it better? How do we differentiate yourself, or how do you differentiate yourself from your competition? That is something that can help you drive understanding that and utilizing that and marketing that can help you drive revenue. In downturns or when it's difficult economic times, it's a good time that you can expand. If you got the financial wherewithal, expand. And looking at horizontal and vertical expansion avenues are something that can be critical to your long-term health, taking advantage of the downturn. Subscription models that I mentioned, recurring revenue. And so how do we take our current products and transition those from a purchase that's every once in a while to a purchase that's predictable and something that you can get paid on a monthly or quarterly or annual basis? And there's some real good examples of people out there that have done this recurring revenue. And what happens is you pay it month after month after month, and no one really sees it getting paid. But the fact of the matter is that it's a good way for you to take a look and transition to recurring revenue. And then we talked about cost optimization. When it comes down to it, there's a number of companies that provide expert evaluations for different savings across various domains. There's utilities, there's tax credits, there's specialty tax credits, but a lot of these companies will actually do the evaluation, and you don't have to pay anything to do the evaluation. It really comes down to they're going to take whatever they can save you, they're going to take a percentage of it. But if you're not doing it today, then why would you think you're going to be able to do it tomorrow? And so you're not. So the reality is, if you don't pay someone to do it, and it's really on a contingency basis, it really makes sense to talk to these companies to at least have them take a look for you to see what you can do. I've seen companies, really save money, really from $5,000 to $20,000 an employee, which can be pretty significant. That really depends on your company. So there's potential savings is there. I'm just saying that there's a lot of things that you can do, but I would say it's time to look at getting an expert to figure out how to do it. And then we're continuing to look at cost cutting, identify and evaluate your major cost drivers. I already talked about seeking expert advice. There's tax savings programs, cost segregation, specialty tax credits. You really need to talk to a tax professional to see, and I have access to them, that can help you focus on what you can do to cut those costs. So kind of run through this relatively quickly, but when it comes down to it, if we take action today, we can make a significant difference on our profitability. We can make a significant difference on our sales growth. There's a lot of things we can do, but it's going to require some changes. It's going to require adaptability on your part. It's going to require some innovation and some strategic decision making. And I'm going to tell you, by prioritizing your employee well-being, optimizing your cash management, really evaluating your revenue and cost structures. Is there a way you can use AI to really drive sales? Focus on lead generation, speed to lead, and it really comes down to there's a way that we can help you fix those things or change those things so that your companies, nonprofits, and employees can really thrive in this environment. But it's going to take some action on your part to do that. I'd be willing to spend a few minutes to talk to you. I'm not asking for anything other than a few minutes to talk and see if there's some way that I can give you, or we can share ideas on how to best move forward in this so that we can have achieve the goals that we'd like to. I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak for a few minutes. If you want, give me a call. And I look forward to you having a fantastic week. Thanks, and have a great week. Bye now.